Just want to start by introducing this course, this webinar today. So this is put on by Cashflow Academy 101. I'm Brandon Hollabaugh. I'll be talking about how to buy your first cash flowing property, rental property in the next 90 days. There's a lot of, theories out there. There's a lot of questions out there. There's a lot of complicated information out there that sort of overcomplicates this idea and makes it seem like it's impractical, makes it seem like the timing's off, makes it seem like, the market's not right. Well, I'm going to kind of lay this out in a structured way that is practical enough for anybody to do it, okay? And I'm going to give you tools that I wish I had when I started. When I started out, I had no money, I had no mentorship, no resources, really just reading books and listening to podcasts and YouTube videos about how to do this. But we're going to talk about how to execute this in an efficient way with a good system, not someday, not when the market changes, not when the rates are better. We're going to do it in 90 days. And I'm going to break down the deal for you today and show you the real math on how this works. And so you can actually see that there is a system here and there's a method to the madness. All right, who am I and why should you listen to me with your valuable time for the next 1 hour? My name is Brandon Hollabaugh. I'm the founder of BNC Real Estate Solutions. That is our real estate holding and investment company. And I am the founding partner of Cashflow Academy. In Cashflow Academy, we focus on connecting investors or up-and-coming investors or potential investors with the resources and education they need and give them the systems to scale up towards their goals, whatever that may be, whether it's rental properties or whether it is, flipping properties. Today, we're going to be focusing primarily on rental properties and buying and holding properties. I started in real estate back in 2010 when I was 23 years old. I was young, I was broke, I was enlisted in the active duty Navy, and I read a book that made me want to be this real estate investor. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. We had a toddler and a newborn, and there was just not enough money to make ends meet. And so I decided at that time I was going to wholesale. Wholesaling is a way of doing real estate when you have zero or very little invested cash, but you could still make money. I made a ton of mistakes. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't know that I should probably get a mentor. I spun my wheels a lot, analyzing deals and trying to figure out how to make these deals pencil and just being frustrated that I was losing the limited amount of time that I had. So that's a little bit of my backstory. Now, fast forward to today. In 2022, I quit my job. I was a Colorado State trooper at that time, and I left that job for real estate full time. Now we own over 50 rental properties, residential rental properties, and we have commercial properties, various types of commercial and other residential multifamily stuff as well. Now I focus a lot of my time on education. With Cashflow Academy, we educate people on how to scale up and what systems to put in place so that they can achieve their goals in real estate. And so I really enjoy the aspect of helping other people get a win, okay? My goal in real estate has always been really simple. It's just to be able to have enough money to live my life on my terms so that I can prioritize the time with the people I love. Time is our only real commodity here. And, in my opinion, passive income is the best way to get back your time. And passive income, rental properties can be an incredible source of that passive income. So, today, I'm an investor, a coach, husband, father of 4 crazy teenagers, awesome teenagers. And in my spare time, we do this kind of stuff and educate people on how to do this themselves. So let's talk about some fundamental strategies. So first, in Cashflow Academy, we teach these 4 fundamental strategies on real estate investment. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do real estate investment, but these are 4 that I consider sort of the staples. If you learn these, you start to build out your creativity in your team. And if you have an understanding of these, and then you could find which one fits you best. So wholesaling properties is your short-term investment, very little invested cash, sometimes zero money invested into real estate to get a short gain, a quick gain, right? Flipping properties, we've all seen HGTV shows where they buy a dilapidated property, put some money into it, and then turn around and sell it. And that's sort of your mid-range gain in real estate. Today, we'll be focusing on buying and holding rental properties, and that's your long game. And so I say the term get rich slow plan, and I don't know if there's a less sexy phrase than get rich slow, but that is what it is. And it really gives you security, and it gives you that passive income. And so my goal in life is always to buy back my time. How can I have money coming in? How can I be cashing checks from rental properties without it stealing a bunch of my time? And so the flipping and the wholesaling, very labor intensive and can take a lot of your time, whereas rental property holding can give you your time back. All right. And then we also teach the BRRRR method, which is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. We're not going to go deep into that today, but that's another way to get rental properties. So I told you we're going to break it down into this simple framework, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do 4 steps, and we're going to do 90 days. And the way that I like to do this so that we're applying enough pressure on ourselves to make a move in 90 days is to give a timeline. Okay. So here you can see we have 4 steps: define, search, analyze, and act. We're going to break them down so they're very simple. Dates, how many days? So for our define phase, we're going to go 1 to 15 days, about 2 weeks to define. All right. The truth is, most people, they never jump in, they never make the first move. In fact, a lot of people will get stuck between step 3 and step 4, analyze and act, and they'll never take action. I get analysis paralysis. I call it analysis paralysis. That's when you're looking at a deal so close and you're doing the numbers. And, oh, what if I missed something? And oh my gosh, did I do my numbers right? Am I looking in the right market? And you freeze. You get paralysis and you fail to act, you fail to move forward. So type it in the chat if you feel like it. How long have you been looking, and what are you looking for? What's holding you back here? All right. So in our define phase, I really want us to think about some specifics that are going to fit your investing criteria. And so if someone asks me, what kind of rental properties do you like? For me, I like something bigger than, I like a 4-plex or bigger. Now, there's a couple reasons for that, but ultimately you have to pick your property type, your area. Your location is extremely important. All right. You want to be on the right side of the tracks. If you're on the south side of the tracks, just because you could buy a property for extremely cheap doesn't mean it's the right location. In a lot of cases, it's better to spend a little more because you have a better renter pool. Rents will be a little higher in those areas, and tenants will likely take better care of your property. And so when we go into these, I really want you to think about what property works for you. For the purpose of this webinar, getting your first rental property in 90 days, I'm going to focus more on the single family home side. So property type is going to be a single family home in a decent area. And I have one specific that in a market that we play in, that we buy in, and that I'll bring up. The other thing is minimum cash flow. Now, be careful about minimum cash flow because a lot of people go, I want $1,000 a month for my single family home. That's the cash flow I'm willing to take. Remember, this is a get rich slow plan. Okay. And $1,000 a month, while those deals do exist, that can be difficult to find in a single family home. And so keep your expectations realistic. This thing builds on itself over time. And so, well, maybe initially you're only cash flowing a couple $100. Over time, you're raising rents, you're improving properties, you're accumulating more properties. So I'm going to go through these. I'll probably come back to this slide, but you can see how we're going to structure this. So let's look at our timelines here. In your first 2 weeks, I want you to do 2 very important things. One, figure out what you're going to buy. We're going to stick to I'm going to do a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, roughly 1,500 square foot single family home in a decent part of town. And you need to line up your financing. Okay. A lot of people, they think I'm going to go buy a rental property. What have you done to prepare? I haven't even spoke to a lender. So in the define phase, in those first 2 weeks, you need to talk to a lender and figure out what kind of financing you can get. They're going to want to know your credit. They want to know your income. They may want to see some U-2s or some pay stubs or something like that. It's very important that initially when talking to a lender, you are honest with them. They need to be able to paint a realistic picture of what you can do. Okay. And this is if you're going to purchase a property using a traditional lender. There are other types of lending that we'll touch on that can help you if, let's say, you don't have good credit. There's other types of creative ways that can still help you get through into your first property. A lot of people are like, credit's bad, the end, it's over, right? That's not the case. There are a lot of options there. Some people think, well, real estate takes a lot of money down, a lot of cash. I have to save up a ton of money to get there. That is good. It's good to have those things and be prepared in those ways. However, that's not always the case. There are other ways to get it. There are other ways to partner with other people who do have that cash. Okay, so talk to a lender. Let's start looking at how you're going to finance these deals. Set your buy box, which is just a fancy way of saying your buying criteria, what you want to do. A lot of people think in our second phase, in our search phase, a lot of people think, okay, just go straight to Zillow, which is a very great place to start. And that's where we'll find all of our leads. Well, there's other ways to find leads, and we'll work through those. Then we're going to analyze the deal. We'll run through the numbers. That's the part that often a lot of people feel intimidated by. And I'm going to show you a few tools that really help you move through that with confidence and quickly, because time is money. Your time is very valuable. You don't want to get caught up in that analysis paralysis cycle. And so we're going to go through and make sure that you feel confident running the numbers and analyzing the numbers as we move forward. And then finally, submitting an offer or taking action. Okay, that 60 to 90 days, you are going to close your first rental property and you're going to be off to the races. Now, in the defining phase, you want to define what you're looking for. Now, let me talk about a single family home here. Now, here's the thing about a single family home. One cost that's going to get you is your vacancy cost if someone moves out. So let's say you want them to be in there 12 months out of the year and then you have 1 month vacant. In that 1 month, you are down to zero and you still have carrying costs. And so when we talk about duplexes, fourplexes, or multifamily, they sort of hedge against that vacancy cost a little bit, because if you have a fourplex and one goes vacant, you're only 25% out and you have time to get a new tenant in there. And so that's why I add them all in there. Today, we're going to focus primarily on single family homes. What location we talked about, price range, it's going to vary from market to market. The market that I'm in Southwest Colorado. We do a lot of stuff in Colorado and New Mexico. You have to look at your market and start looking at the prices in that market. If you're in a very, very expensive area and the rent demand is low, it's primarily people buying their own homes, that may not be the best area. You may need to look in another market. So identify the location ahead of time during your first 2 weeks in your define phase. What minimum monthly cash flow will you accept? Like I said, keep your expectations realistic. You want it to cash flow. I don't think it's a good idea to buy break-even investments as your first investment. You want to be covering all your expenses and cash flowing at least a small amount in the beginning. You need a win to start out, and I think that's really important. And then, of course, how do you plan on financing it? Are you going to use a conventional bank loan, or are we going to get creative here and use some other methods? But I want you to have a crystal clear buy box lined out. So write it out. Just write out what you're looking for, write out what you think you want right off the bat, and have it identified. And then that's out of the way. And then you can focus on lining up financing. So on days 15 through 30, we're going to search. Here are some methods. Most people go straight to Zillow, so it's a great place to start. Zillow and MLS, or properties listed on the multiple listing service, are very important. And that's number one on this list, is where we connect with a realtor. If you connect with a realtor or broker or real estate agent, they're all called, those are all the same things. You want to find one that is going to understand what you're looking for. You want a realtor who understands what you're looking for. You want them to speak the language. I personally like realtors who have investments of their own, who have rental properties of their own, because they know exactly what I'm looking for. Number two here is driving for dollars. Now, this one is so undervalued. I just call it paying attention. Just driving from street to street, you could see properties that have grown up grass, boarded up windows, newspapers in the yard, even though newspapers are less common now. On trash day, if all the trash cans are out and their trash can is in, that might be a good sign that property is vacant. You may have an absentee owner there. You may have someone who inherited the property and just needs to let it go, needs to get rid of it. So that's a huge place to find leads. So don't sleep on driving for dollars. There are things like direct mailing. You can reach out to people. You can send letters. Hey, I saw your house. I'd like to see if you're interested in selling it. Wholesalers are people who specialize in going out and finding the deals and bringing them to investors like you who want rental properties. And so you can connect with wholesalers on places like Facebook, on places like LinkedIn, and you can let the wholesalers know, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot on this side of town. Send me everything you got. And in a lot of cases, those wholesalers will go out and hunt for you. Now remember, that is a huge time saver. Your time is valuable and you're letting someone else go do the work for you. Also, networking, word of mouth. We use this really large scale. I tell everyone I know, hey, here's the properties I'm looking for. And if you bring me that property, I'll pay you a finder's fee. And that's just one of the methods that have worked really well for me. The more people who know you are a real estate investor will start to pass those leads to you. So start telling people you're a real estate investor now. Okay, you're taking the course, you're spending your time, you're investing your most valuable commodity in this course. You are a real estate investor, and you're going to continue to get the education that you need to move forward towards your goals. And then last one, off-market outreach. There's a lot of ways to reach out to people off market, but ultimately there are ways to search people up, owners of properties, on public sources and find ways to connect with them. Hey, I saw your property. I saw the weeds growing up above the windows. What's the story behind that? That's a great way to get a good deal on your first rental. You'll hear this a lot. When you get into rental properties, you win on the buy side. You want to buy right. You don't want to try to force the numbers to work and then try to raise rents up as close to the top market as you can or something like that. You're wanting to get in on a good price so that we can make sure that we have cash flowing property right off the bat. All right, so now we're in the analyze phase. So now we're in days. So we've taken the first 2 weeks to get some clarity and define what we're looking for. That will save you a mountain of time. That's in that define phase. We've moved into our search phase, and that is our second 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, if you're using your spare time, the time you have after work, if you're using that time to search for deals and to get on Zillow and on Redfin and Trulia and all these different sources searching for deals, in 2 weeks, you can go through a lot of deals. So now we're in our analyze phase. We've found some deals that meet our criteria. We've hit the spot. We're in that 30 to 60 day range. In that time, we want to run the numbers. And I have up at the top, analyze the deal, stress test the deal. We don't want to assume we'll have sunny skies, beautiful, everything is just perfect, smooth sailing. And then when we run our numbers, we're too optimistic and the numbers are tighter than we expected. I've made those mistakes and I don't want you to make them, which is why I'm putting this webinar on. So right here at the top, I have this thing that says, the 1% rule. It's more of a guideline that is meant to save you time than an actual rule, but the 1% rule just says that your monthly rents should be at least 1% of the purchase price. And so today I have this address here, this 502 West Animas Street, and this is the actual one, and I'll pull up Zillow in a second. It's listed for $179,900, and we know we can rent it for $1,800 a month in that market. I know that because it says we have sources where you find it, but there's also a section on Zillow that will say estimated rent. And there's several different ways you can just vet that and compare that and look at that market. You could also just call for rent signs and say, hey, what are you renting your 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom for? And they'll let you know. But if I'm going through a bunch of potential rental properties, this 1% rule saves me a lot of time. And it prevents me from looking at deals that are just probably not going to meet my criteria or the numbers aren't going to work. And so in this specific deal here, we can see that it meets that. It says deal passes. So I'm going to get out of this PowerPoint here and I'm going to jump onto that one on Zillow. Okay, so here's that listing. Can you guys see that? So I pulled this up last night. It's in a market, Farmington, New Mexico, that we play in. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1429 square foot. Looks decent, you know, and we can go through the photos and just make sure that it looks like it's going to work for our criteria. I see tile floors here. I see updated windows. Everything looks pretty good. And to me, it looks like it will make a solid rental. It's nothing too fancy, but it looks durable. It looks like it'll make a great rental. So a couple things I want to show you on here is if I scroll down a little, there is a section in here that will show me the estimated rent right down here. Rent Zestimate, $1,818 a month. So right off the bat, I know that this is in my range. We can also start to look at some expenses like property taxes. This was from 2024, but you can start look at some property taxes in here and kind of see what your expenses are going to come out as. And so we know that this is in the right area. It meets our criteria. We know that we can rent it for $1,800 a month. And so I'm going to go back here and we'll just go through the numbers. All right, so I have two scenarios here, conventional financing and creative financing, where the seller of the property is going to act like the bank. They're going to carry the note for me. So you can see our down payment with conventional financing is going to be, in a lot of cases, going to be 20%. Now, there's some other scenarios where it can be less, and I'll briefly touch on some of those. But we'll just say for this one, our traditional financing is going to be about $36,000. A lot of money. It may take some saving, some preparation, or some partnering. So as we look through this, we're looking at a regular interest rate these days, 7%. Our monthly principal and interest payment is $958. And then we know we could rent it for $1,800 a month. Now, I have expenses in here, and I'll show you another tool called Deal Check that can help you nail down your expenses. Because a lot of people go, what is it going to cost me to run this thing? Am I going to need to pay a maintenance guy or a property manager or whatever it may be? Ultimately, you need to kind of have an idea, and I'll show you another tool that can help you really get tight on those expenses. But we can see, we do the math here. We take our rents, our gross rents, $1,800 a month. We subtract out our debt service or our payment here, and then our expenses, and we're still cash flowing $442 a month. Does that one work? Yeah, it looks like it works. $442 a month on your first deal is good cash flow. On the right side over here, seller carry, this is where I have the seller carry note. Now, if the house is paid off, I can go to the seller and say, I'll pay you payments instead of paying the bank payments. This is where real estate gets good, and this is where I really love to negotiate. I've acquired 50 plus rental properties. The majority of them, the vast majority of them, have been on creative financing where the seller carries the note or a combination of that. So over here, you can see we negotiated a lower down payment, 10%, $17,000, $18,000. All right. We negotiated a lower interest rate at 5%. If it works for the seller, and you might say, well, a seller would never take that. Well, that's not true. I have negotiated deals where the sellers have taken much lower than market interest rates. And you have to just build that rapport, build that connection, and ask. Real estate is not about properties and profits. It's about people. It's about making connections with people and building relationships. And so if you're building the relationship with the seller, you very well may end up with these great terms. Okay. So we can see in this scenario where the seller carries it, we have a lower payment, we have a lower interest rate, we have the same rent and the same expenses. We're cash flowing $531 a month on your first property. That's huge. That is an $89 difference between traditional financing and just getting a little creative. And this stuff's not hard, guys. Once you learn how to talk to sellers about this, it becomes easier and easier for you to present it to them in a way that it's a win for them and it's a win for you. I'm going to show you this program called Deal Check. So it might look intimidating, but ultimately I have the same property here, this West Animas Street. And when I go into this, and they have a free version of this, they also have a paid version that allows you to do more properties at once. When I'm driving for dollars or when I'm looking at properties, this saves me so much time. And so I've added in this property, and you can see when I go back, it has rental properties, BRRRRs, flips, and wholesales. I've gone in, I've added in our 502 West Animas Drive. Now what this is going to do is just going to take you right down the line, and it gives you these little bubbles to explain how this works. We know our price is $179.9. We know we're going to be using financing. If you, as you're going through these, if you don't know what to put in them, these little informational bubbles can help out. All right. We're going to put 20% down, and we got a 7% interest. So all we're doing here is we're just filling in the blanks, going down little by little. That property didn't need any rehab. Like we said, it looked like it was set up to be a good rental. We know that our rents will be $1,800 a month. Now this is important. I talked about this earlier. What is a vacancy rate or a vacancy expense? We have to be smart as property owners and investors. We have to know that property is going to go vacant from time to time. And so when we look at that, we calculate that as an expense. I use 10% for this market. Now, if you're in a market that's in heavy rental demand, you could probably go to 5%. That thing won't be vacant very long. If you're in a market that doesn't have a very strong rental demand, you might need to go to 15%. My market is somewhere in the middle, so I use 10%. Operating expenses. And when you look at these operating expenses, we got taxes, insurance, maintenance. And what you don't see in this one is property management. The reason I left property management out is because I believe that on your first property, it's good to manage it yourself. And you might be like, why? That's crazy. I thought we're talking about getting our time back. Well, the reason I think it's important to manage it yourself, at least on your first property, is because you will learn how everything works. You will get a fast education. The thing that sets you apart from the next investor is your willingness to educate yourself like you are right now. So if you manage that property, you're going to learn all the headaches and all the ins and outs of how to do that, how to manage it. And then one day when you have 4 or 5 properties, maybe more, you can get a property manager. You can justify that expense. You'll know how to run those properties, and you'll know how to support your property manager, who's a vital part of your team. And so that's why I left that off. But ultimately, we added in our expenses. Now we're just going to go up to the top here and we're just going to see if this works. At the top here, it says property analysis. Here we got cash flow, $446 up in this top corner. We have this little check mark here. And I hope you guys can see this. I know it's small, but it says passes the one rule. And it says cash flow greater than $250. The only reason those are in there is because I can edit the criteria that this deal check uses to decide if this is a good deal. And you can see, I can set in my parameters. I can say, I want it to pass the 1% rule. I want $250 a month or greater in cash flow. Will this meet my criteria? And boom, you get the green check mark. If it didn't meet those, you get a red X. And so again, this tool is very valuable in saving your time, and you can go through a lot of deals in here. Just punch them in. As you see it, does it work? If it does, it'll give you the green check mark. So there's those deals broken down. Now, we have a free calculator that we're dropping in. It's an Excel spreadsheet. I know some people are allergic to Excel spreadsheets. Don't get intimidated by that. There are so many ways to calculate out your rental cash flow. And you just saw deal check. There's calculators.net. There's so many. And all you got to do is just search up, rental property calculator, and that'll bring them up. But ultimately, if you don't like Excel, there's other ways to do that. From analyze to act. We're in this last 60 to 90 days. This is when you need to be prepared, and preparation is huge. All right. Preparation is what's going to separate you from investors who close the deal and investors who just keep on looking at other deals or watch other investors close the deal. What we see too much of is people getting stuck between the analyze and act. Again, they get analysis paralysis. They never go talk to their lender. They don't get the things in place that they need to have to be ready to act. So have your financing lined up before you need it. If you know that you don't have the credit or don't have the ability to go out and get a bank loan, and you're going to have to go after creative financing or seller financing, you need to know that in advance, because you're focusing on a whole different type of deal. You're going to be focusing only on deals that have that as an option. Does that mean you can't get them? No, absolutely. You absolutely can. You just have to know that going into it so that you're prepared to negotiate with the seller. I always say negotiation is about motivation. Okay. Negotiation is about knowing why the seller needs to sell. So when you approach a seller in these cases, or even if you're working through a realtor, I always ask, why do they need to sell? Why are they selling that property in the first place? It's good to know, and it's a good way for you to start thinking about your negotiation. If their reason is, I need to sell as fast as I can because I'm in financial trouble, something like that, you know that they're motivated by speed, quickness of closing, right? So negotiation is about motivation. It's not about you just saying, well, I want this number. And they say, well, I want that number. Focus on their motivation and you'll have a better outcome. Focus on a win for both sides. Submit a clean professional offer. Speed wins deals. In most cases, speed does win deals. We've had some where they weren't motivated to close quickly because they needed time to move all their belongings or whatever it was, or they had to wait for their next residence. And so sometimes I would say timing is what often wins deals. But submit a clean professional offer. You're going to be partnering, especially on your first deal. You most likely want to partner with a good realtor. And again, I encourage you to find a realtor who understands investing. This is going to allow you to lean on them and their expertise in how to submit that clean professional offer. And they will also know how to protect your assets, timelines for inspections, timelines for financing, stuff like that. Stay organized throughout the contract process. Remember, this is usually about 30 days. This is that 60 to 90 day period. Okay. In that period, you're going to want to get an inspection. You're going to want to check out the property. You're going to want to make sure that your numbers are clear. And so it's important that you stay organized. And again, your realtor will help you do that. Treat every deal like it's the start of a long-term relationship. I couldn't pound this home enough. The more you look at real estate as the opportunity to build a connection, a relationship with another human being or another business or another entity, the further you will go. We have had a lot of deals where it was built on building a long-term relationship. I bought a 2-pack of rental properties from a guy, and they were abandoned. He told me they were rental properties, but he just didn't put renters in them. So they were vacant forever. And I started out just offering to buy him lunch. We went to lunch, we went to coffee a couple times. Fast forward like 2 or 3 years, and finally he calls me and he goes, Brandon, I am ready to sell those. I can't get out of those properties fast enough. Let's do it. And I said, well, I could buy them from you, but I need creative financing. I need you to finance them at 5%. I could only do 5% down at the time. He was thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled. He goes, you solved my problem, which is I need to get rid of those things. I was ready to move on with life. And so I got a great deal that beat the bank rates by far. And so ultimately, remember, real estate is not about properties and profits, it's about people. And the more you can put your head in that space, the easier this will be to get into. So knowing the framework and actually taking action are two different things. I gave you the timeline. I presented to you how to walk through this, the steps you need to take to be prepared to act on your first rental property. And you have to be the one that goes and does it. There's a lot of different ways to move this thing forward and to get you. Once you get your first deal, the rest of them seem much easier. That first one is just this hump. Once you get over that hump, it becomes much easier to continue and scale up. Now, some things that have really helped me is connecting with the resources that I need to move me into the next phase, whatever my goals are. Your goals might be to buy 10 properties. It might be to buy 1,000 properties. Well, you need to be surrounding yourself with the people who are buying 10 properties or 1,000 properties, the people who know how to do what you're doing. And I can say from my experience, once I was willing to do that, once I surrounded myself with the right people, my business really accelerated. My investments brought me so much closer to my goals. I always say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably standing in the wrong room, right? So surround yourself with people who are going to build you up and edify you and move you towards your goals. Again, most people quit between that analyze and act. The way that you can prevent that from happening is accountability. Again, telling people I'm a real estate investor, you're putting pressure on yourself. You're making yourself accountable for the things that you say you want to achieve and the goals that you say you've set. We're often second guessing the numbers. We're looking at the deal. We're getting analysis paralysis. When you've surrounded yourself with the people that kind of push you forward, and when you've told people, I am an investor, I am going to buy my next rental property in 90 days. You got enough pressure, you have enough personal accountability and outside accountability to move you towards that. You don't need more information. You need the system. You need the system and the right people around you to help you move towards your goals. We've given you the framework here. We've talked about how to line out your timelines and the steps to take in each to get there. It's as simple as this, guys, 4 steps. You can go through here and pencil out each thing that you need to do to close your next deal, but you're not going to do it if you're getting analysis paralysis. You're not going to do it if you're getting stuck between any one of these steps. So start taking action, start moving yourself towards what you want to do. I'm not just making this stuff up. This isn't just stuff that I read in a book one time. I have closed deals using these methods. I've closed tons of deals using creative financing. The majority of the properties that I own now, I've used zero of my own money to get into them. And it's not voodoo here. It's just about knowing how to do it and being creative enough to do it. I invest so that I can live life on my terms, and I think that you should identify your goals as well. My goals have always been the same. I just want to be able to prioritize the people that I have in my life and time with them. With the right strategy, you can change everything. This can really move you forward in your investment goals. Like I said, Cashflow Academy, we teach wholesaling, flipping, the BRRRR method, and rental property, how to buy and hold rental properties. We teach how to get creative financing. We connect the investor with their next deal, and we do that with accountability and community. Delshawn, you said funding I'm guessing that's for getting stuck on. Does anybody else have any other questions on any of the stuff that we talked about? I often get a lot of questions on creative financing. How do you find these deals? I'm just going to dive right into that. Let's see here. So on creative financing, one method that I actually took a page out of a friend of mine's book, he went around and he called for sale or for rent signs. Every for rent sign he saw in a yard or a window, he would call it. He'd say, hey, I saw that you have the place for rent. I'm actually interested in buying my own rental properties. Would you be interested in selling on seller financing, on creative financing? What an incredible way to go around and generate some potential leads on creative financing. You know, you will get a lot of no's. I guarantee you'll get a lot of no's. but there's also a lot of opportunity there to get a lot of yeses. The other thing is spread the word. Tell your friends, hey, I'm looking for some rental properties. If you see anything, let me know. There's so many ways to go out there and find these deals. Another big one, like we talked about, is realtors. Connect with a realtor. Let them know you're looking for your first rental property and you want to move in that direction. They'll start sending you leads uh, in those areas. Tyrell, I'm guessing you're talking about the creative financing. In my experience with creative financing, I have done a lot of deals. We have got a lot of deals just by connecting and creating relationships with the sellers or the owners. And that's where it starts. You probably know someone like this already. In a lot of cases, these are older folks who have had rental properties for a while, or even maybe they just own a second home that they don't spend time at anymore. It's often about connecting with those people and building those relationships and having the guts to ask the question. A lot of times we're really bashful about asking, hey, have you thought about selling that? And I don't know if I'd sell it like that. I don't know if I'd present it like that. You could say something like, I've really been thinking about getting into rental properties, and I'd like to start with a single family home. Have you thought about selling that home that you have, that extra home or that rental property that you have? In a lot of cases, these can lead to a bigger conversation. In a lot of cases, these can lead to a really, really great seller financing opportunity. We teach that at a very high level in Cashflow Academy, and I push that hard because I think there's a lot of opportunities there that people aren't going after. We get stuck in this mindset of the traditional way. I got to come up with 20 down. I have to go to the bank. I have to have good, perfect credit, 730 score credit. There's a lot of other ways that we can get into these deals that don't require that. The other one is an FHA loan will allow you to put 3.5% down. Now there's a caveat here. You have to live in that property or occupy the property for 12 months minimum. I think these are better on duplexes or fourplexes where you can live in one unit while you rent the other ones out. That's often referred to as house hacking. But yeah, there's the FHA loan where you're bringing 3.5% as opposed to 20% as an investment loan. There's other ways to fund these, like private money. If you have a friend who's an investor who's willing to invest in you, or a family member who has that money, you can use them to get into that deal. So people always say two things. They say there's not enough deals. I can't find the deals, right? I can't find the deals. And I tell them this, there are more deals out there than you can imagine. You just got to know where to look for them. The other thing they say is, I can't afford it. I don't have the investable cash. I don't have enough money. To which I respond, there is more money out there than you can imagine. You just have to go out. You have to know how to go out and ask for it and get it. When I started investing in real estate, I went to a friend of mine who I know had access to money, and I said, I want to start flipping houses. I want to start acquiring rental properties. Will you invest with me? And we talked a little bit about it and how it would work. And he said, let's do it. To this day, we still partner on huge deals. And so if I never would have grown the gall to go ask and built my own confidence up to enough to go ask, things would have stopped right there. I would have limited myself right there just by that. Guys, ultimately, I love helping other investors. I love seeing people get wins. We'll do a free coaching call with you where we'll talk about your goals and how you can move towards those and how we can help you get closer to whatever it is you want to achieve with real estate. I really appreciate everybody's time. I hope you guys got some value out of this. I enjoy talking about these things, and I think that's it. We're going to go ahead and sign off.